There's a very particular kind of loneliness that comes from telling the truth and watching people look away. You try to raise what was happening. Maybe you told a parent, a teacher, a partner, a therapist. You talked about the yelling, the threats, the silent treatment, the way the whole house walked on eggshells when one person came home. You finally used the word abuse. And instead of relief, you got that familiar tilt of the head. Are you sure? Your mum and dad love you. I've never seen them act like that. You can be a bit dramatic. Sometimes it was softer. It couldn't have been that bad. I'm sure they did their best. All parents lose it sometimes. If you grew up as the scapegoat, you know that feeling in your bones. You weren't just dealing with what was happening. You were treated as suspect for naming it. So here's the question this video is answering. If you were telling the truth, why didn't anybody believe you? The short answer is, it was never about how honest you were. It was about what other people needed to believe to stay comfortable. Let's zoom out from you as an individual and look at the system you were in. In a lot of dysfunctional families, roles aren't random. One child gets cast as the responsible one or the golden child. They're proof the parents are doing a great job. Another child is quietly assigned the role of the problem, the sensitive one, the difficult one, the one who takes things the wrong way or stirs the pot. That's the scapegoat. The person the family's discomfort gets dumped on so everyone else can feel clean. On the surface, your family may have looked ordinary or even impressive. Good jobs, decent house, birthday photos on Facebook, people at church saying what a lovely family. Underneath, there was a story everyone had to quietly agree to. We're a good family. We do our best. If there is a problem, it must be that one child who overreacts. People outside the family often buy that version. There's a strong bias to believe most parents do their best and kids exaggerate. So the working assumption becomes, they're strict, not abusive, you're just sensitive. Systems are built to defend that narrative. When you started naming what was actually happening, you weren't just criticising a parent, you were threatening the whole story the family used to feel like decent people. And here's where siblings often come in. One sibling can become the PR manager for the family. They repeat the official line. Dad just has the temper. Mum's under a lot of stress. You know how you get. They get rewarded for defending that story. You get punished for cracking it. So by the time you speak, people are already primed to see your version as the distorted one. Sometimes, it's not just one sibling. It's a whole group doing a soft pile-on. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends acting as flying monkeys. All gently explaining that you took it the wrong way. That you've always been a bit dramatic. That your parents are actually saints. From the outside, it looks like everyone's agreeing. From the inside, feels like being gaslit by an entire family. Under that pattern, there are a few very predictable mechanisms running. The first is gaslighting. Gaslighting isn't just someone lying. It's a structured campaign to make you doubt your own perception. In a family, this might sound like, that never happened. You're remembering it wrong. Everyone else was fine with it. Why are you making such a big deal? You always twist things. Over time, you start to think, if they're all agreeing and I'm the only one who sees it, maybe I am the problem. Layered over that is a pattern called DAVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. You say, what you did hurt me. They say, I never did that. You're attacking me. You're the abusive one for accusing me. Suddenly, you're defending yourself against the charge that you caused harm by naming harm. If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, how did I end up on trial for saying I was hurt? That's what you were in. Now imagine that pattern not just inside the house, but in front of outsiders. When you finally tell a professional or another adult, the person you named shows up as their public version. Polite, calm, charming. They play the worried parent card. We're so concerned about her. She has been so angry lately. He's always struggled with his temper. We're doing our best. They deny just enough, they downplay the rest. They gently question your mental health. They present themselves as the reasonable adult dealing with a troubled kid. You've seen this in the comments sections. He's always been lovely to me. She seems like such a good mum. I can't imagine her doing that. The abuser looks like a pillar of the community, and you look like the mess. So the room splits. On one side, you, shaking, angry, struggling to find words because your whole body is in fight or flight. On the other side, the person who harmed you, looking composed and reasonable. Many people, including professionals, side with the person who looks easier to deal with. Then once a few people doubt you, everyone else uses that as a clue. If the other siblings say it wasn't that bad, maybe I'm overreacting. If the therapist is sitting on the fence, who am I to call it abuse? Nobody wants to be the one who names abuse and then has to deal with the fallout. So the safest move for them is to stay neutral or quietly slide to the majority view. From the outside, it looks like consensus. From the inside, it's a system closing ranks. If this sounds personal, it is. But it's not just personal. There's a pattern in the research that matches what you lived. Studies on child abuse and domestic violence keep finding the same thing. Survivors are routinely disbelieved, blamed, or treated as less credible than the person they accuse, especially when the accused is calm, respected, or socially powerful. The more normal or impressive the adult looks on paper, the more people hesitate to believe the kid. Professionals worry about being wrong, about false accusations, about blowing up a family. So they default to caution. That caution usually means doubting the person who has the least power to protect themselves. At the same time, people who actually work with survivors talk about how hard it is to speak up in the first place. Many people take years or decades to say anything. When they do speak, they often test the waters with someone they think is safe. If that first attempt is minimised, brushed off, or turned back on them, they shut down fast. If you shut down after that first, I'm sure they did their best, that makes sense. Your brain was learning that telling the truth was dangerous and pointless. On top of that, trauma doesn't produce neat courtroom-ready stories. It produces fragments. The senses remember, the body reacts. Details blur around the edges. Memories show up out of order. You remember the sound of the footsteps, the feeling in your stomach, the pattern on the carpet, but you're not sure which year it was. None of that means you're lying. Trauma research and people on the front line with survivors both say the same thing. Highly stressful events can scramble the way memories are laid down. They often come back jagged and messy, not as a clean timeline. So when you struggle to remember events in a perfectly tidy way, people in charge of saying yes or no to your story treat that as proof that you're unreliable, instead of as a normal trauma response. Meanwhile, the person who harmed you has had years to rehearse their version. They know which details to leave out. They stay calm because they're not reliving it. They sound believable, not because they're telling the truth, but because this is just another story they have learned to tell. In other words, the whole setup is tilted. The very things that show you were harmed are the things the system uses to doubt you. Your story wasn't dismissed because it was weak. It was dismissed because it was accurate enough to threaten people who had more to lose if it was believed. Living in that environment doesn't just give you bad memories. It rewires how you see yourself. If you were the scapegoat, you probably learned to over-explain everything. You collect screenshots, messages, dates, witnesses, just to feel vaguely safe opening your mouth. You replay conversations for hours trying to work out whether you were unfair. You apologise more than anyone else in the family, even when you were the one that got hurt. You might notice that you hesitate before you tell even small truths now, not because you're dishonest, but because your body remembers what happened last time. The eye roll, the smirk, the long silence, the quiet campaign to paint you as unstable. For a lot of people, being disbelieved is as traumatic as what happened in the first place. Someone writes, "No one believed me," and the comments fill up with, "Same." The hit isn't just the abuse, it's the second injury of having your reality stripped from you. You might notice you step into the blame role in workplaces or friendships because it feels familiar. If something goes wrong, your first thought is, of course it was me. It feels easier to carry it than to fight it. You might feel like you have to tell your story in one perfect shot or not at all. Any gap, any fuzzy detail feels like proof that you're making it up, even though the research says the opposite. That's what chronic disbelief does. It takes a person who is accurately reporting harm and trains them to treat their own perception as a liability. If you're stuck in that loop of maybe it was abuse, maybe I just made it worse in my head, the next step after the free guide is the Scapegoat System Map Workbook. It walks you through mapping your family system, rule by rule, so you can write a verdict you can live with instead of waiting for anyone else to hand you one. I'll leave the link in the description box below. So what does all of this actually mean for you, sitting here years later? First, it lets you separate two things that were fused together: your honesty and their response. You can be someone who told the truth in a system that was invested in never hearing it. Both of those facts can sit side by side. Second, it gives you a clearer filter for the people in your life now. A safe person isn't someone who agrees with you on every detail. A safe person is someone who takes your account seriously, even when it is uncomfortable, and is willing to sit with the possibility that someone they like has harmed you. If someone's first move is, "Are you sure? They've always been lovely to me," you can recognise that as their discomfort talking, not as the final verdict on your reality. Third, it lets you name what is happening inside you when you still feel the urge to overprove. The long document, the 20 screenshots, the 5 disclaimers at the start of a message. That urge isn't proof that you're unreliable. It's the scar tissue of having your truth repeatedly dismissed. If you want something more structured than a video to sit with this, that Scapegoat System Map Workbook I mentioned is there for you to work through in your own time. The link's in the description box below. You don't have to convince the original system. Many of them are fully committed to the story that keeps them comfortable, no matter how clearly you speak. What you can do is stop using their disbelief as your internal benchmark. A line you might try on this is, "There was never anything wrong with my memory or my sensitivity. There was something wrong with what they needed to believe about themselves." You're allowed to hold your story as real, even if the people who caused it never admit it, and even if the wider circle keeps pretending they never saw it. The point of all of this is not to get a unanimous jury verdict from your family. It's to stop using their disbelief as your internal lie detector. If this helped you understand why nobody believed you, the next step is seeing the rules you were trained under. I have a video on the 10 scapegoat rules that breaks that down. That's the one I'd watch next. If nobody believed you, it was never because your truth was too weak. It was because your truth was strong enough to threaten the story they were willing to sacrifice you to protect.